Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing good.
Yeah.
And all set to go.
Yes.
And there seems like there were a lot of events. World War III didn't break out.
Not yet. We're getting there.
We saw a few more seeds planted.
Yeah.
And can you believe that our side would be planting seeds for potential war?
It's
that means that we're un-American.
Yeah.
That's what somebody would say.
If we oppose it, yeah.
But, my definition, probably stole it from somebody else, is that it's only the people that are willing to challenge their own government when they're doing the wrong thing are the real patriots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have a bunch of them out there, and they're willing to, and they see the truth. But it's been a challenge, especially when things become overwhelming, in the sense that even when the bad guy gets trapped, you'd think they'd have enough brains to just back off, but now they come back harder core than ever and noisier than ever. I think maybe they're talking to themselves to prove to themselves that they really are the good guys. And I think of them convince themselves that the way they act, they believe they're the omnipotent kind. But anyway, I want to follow up on what the White House generally does, and the government does, but the White House in particular now promoting the limits on the First Amendment.
Yeah.
When I left Congress last time, that was so many years ago, 6 years ago or so, that one comment I made in there in warning people about what needs to be done, that one of the greatest threats would be infringement of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Believing that ideas have consequence, if people can get together and speak out and not be punished for it, that we have a real good chance. But the fact that I believe there is more infringement than there has been probably in our history, it's still not a final blow, because there's been cultures around the world that have infringed the right to express oneself. And unfortunately, painfully, they get over it. And right now, we're in the midst of the government becoming more authoritarian, more believing that they dictate to us. COVID, that monstrosity has really produced a lot of attacks, but it's automatic that during wartime that you take away civil liberties and you can't say certain things, and certainly after 9/11 that was the case, and now you got to be careful about even the Republicans can discuss this little thing that we discussed for a long time, and that is how we maneuver ourselves in a certain way, that we're moving ourselves to conflict. And now there's a little debate going on about who are the patriots when it comes to how we handle Ukraine. And I have my ideas about who the real patriots are.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing more and more attention to this press conference yesterday when Jen Psaki was asked by one of the reporters, what do you think about Spotify agreeing to put labels on some of their podcasts, including Joe Rogan's, when he talks about things that aren't accepted opinion? And let's put up that first clip. This is from The Independent. Psaki said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, but more can be done. This is the spokesman for the White House, for the president. More can be done. And let's look at the next one. This is the Daily Mail. They always capture the headlines good. White House urges Spotify to do more to, quote, combat misinformation after adding warnings amid Joe Rogan backlash. Psaki says disclaimer is a positive first step, but urges social media and news to be more vigilant. Now, this is the closest we've gotten, because we've struggled with this concept for a while now, because on the one hand, you'll see a lot of people, and especially a lot of libertarians, saying these are private companies, they can do what they want. You can't suggest that they can do this and that. But on the other hand, you have the government telling them, okay, we can drag you down before Congress. We can do all sorts of things to you if you don't do what we say. So at this point, what we're seeing from the very highest level, from the president's own spokesperson, she is urging a quote-unquote private company to engage in censorship and First Amendment restrictions.
Yeah, they're hiding behind a technicality, but they're trying to make one step removed. They're not really the criminals in here. And they've done that a lot, not just for speech, but for action. You know, whether or not you're going to lock down and keep the people and close your business down, fire the people that aren't doing what the government wants. And they have done it. I know there was a time when we haven't thought it through completely. The temptation was there, you know, to say, you know, we have to protect the private industries, but here, not realizing that this was a major deal in moving toward not only corporatism, but to a fascist state where business people become allies of the government, and certainly the medical industry became allies of the government with lockdown.
Yeah.
So that is bringing the two together, and so people have to be cautious. And a lot of people will give up on it and say, well, you know, it's private and we won't do it, believing that that's purity. But when the government coerces and pressures and threatens, and they can close you down and lock you down and fire people and cause the chaos that has occurred in our streets around the country and what's going on now, then you can't say, well, no, the government has nothing to do with it. Yes, the government has a lot to do with it, because they're in partnerships with big business and big government business. A lot of times there's a lot of good people there, but they say, what can I do?
Yeah.
You know, what can I do? Should I just throw my business to the wind and all this, and I'll try and get better people in? So I don't think I condemn everybody that's is involved, because they have some pretty strong arguments about this is difficult, you know, for them to just give in and walk away from what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, you know, Glenn Greenwald is one of the greatest spokespersons in opposition to censorship of all kinds. He doesn't care if he agrees with it, if he hates it. He's a true progressive, a true liberal in the best sense of the word. And he, as can be expected, had a great take on this. And this is that bonus clip, if you wouldn't mind getting that queued up and putting it up. This is a tweet that I think he just put out this morning, actually just before we started the show. But he captures, I think, perfectly the essence of what's going on. If we can get that bonus clip up here. I made it late and sent it out late because I thought it was important enough to the conversation. It's the second thing I sent. But there isn't, here we go, here's Greenwald. He's talking about the Independent article saying White House urges Spotify to take further action on Joe Rogan. Glenn Greenwald's take. There is a long line of clear case law, including from the Supreme Court, holding that the First Amendment's free speech clause is violated when state officials pressure or coerce private actors to censor them. And I think certainly there's an implied threat from Psaki here.
Yeah, and that is, and it's a powerful threat. When you think about the bigger the government is, the more regulations there are, the more taxations that are going on. There's a lot of way of punishing, and I've tried to expose and talk about, because others have revealed, there's a grand collusion with big business and the Federal Reserve. And everybody thinks the Federal Reserve is a very legitimate function of government, and you couldn't exist without it. But the power there, when you're looking, what was the announcement today? The national debt's up to 30 trillion.
That's all?
They can't do any of that without the Federal Reserve. So they have to accommodate, and it's not free markets. It's not libertarianism, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I sort of wonder when I hear Psaki telling, on behalf of the White House, you need to do more. To me, it doesn't sound like their position is one of strength. It almost sounds like weakness, don't you think? I mean, they're so afraid of any alternate voice creeping into the narrative. It doesn't have the power to convey, the narrative. And I'm wondering, there's an old saying, the Streisand effect, and it had to do with something, the singer Barbra Streisand tried to get something taken down. And of course, that drew everyone's attention to it. And I almost think that this whole Rogan thing now is a Streisand effect. Maybe Rogan should send a thank you note to the White House for doing this, because I think he's going to be bigger than ever. He's the biggest podcaster, the biggest single broadcaster in the entire world. But I wonder what will happen. A lot of people on Twitter have also talked about, okay, say Spotify, cancels him. They're going to have to pay out his contract. He's going to have a pocket full of money, and he'll have the option of setting up a platform that can reach many, many more people, and he'll have a renewed interest because it's now the forbidden fruit. So they're really shooting themselves in the foot by trying to censor him.
I'm going to quote somebody from a very unusual source, and let's see, Daniel McAdams.
Oh, no.
And you wrote me a little note as we were discussing what we were about to do, and there was one sentence in there that I thought was very important, and you can expand on this or deny it or whatever you want.
Uh-oh.
No, he says, just like Ukraine, the bad guys, their Achilles heel is that they are so overly confident in themselves, they don't understand when they've pushed it too far. Is there any balance to that, or you stand by what you said?
They don't. I mean, they don't have a sense of it, and it's now so grotesque. The idea that you're going to silence the most. They can silence little podcasters. They can, PayPal can knock people off their platforms, and this and that and the other. But when you silence someone so big, I think you've overstepped your strength.
And then you mix in a little bit of ignorance inside of that too, and they get away with things they shouldn't be getting away in a free society. So shall we go on to talk about?
I was going to say ignorance is the perfect segue to the next segment.
now we're going to talk about an individual, a neighbor prime minister, and he's been pushed a little bit too. Maybe he fits into that category. Well, the Prime Minister we're going to talk about shortly, because we've talked about him before. Maybe people are tired of hearing about him. But I tell you what, some of the information that people are hearing about it is serving our cause of finding, seeking out truth, because more Canadians are writing to us and they are speaking out. They're going on convoys and things. A couple here and there, adding up to quite a few people. But Trudeau is now really buckling down and saying nasty things. I don't know if you have that quote there, but this is just horrible.
We do have the clip, and yesterday we were saying he got in trouble for essentially calling all these truckers Nazis. I mean, these are millions of people. I spent a lot of time yesterday just watching some press conferences of the truckers, looking at the different protests, and here's what they did, Dr. Paul. I know this is going to shock you. These horrible truckers, they were playing hockey in front of the Capitol in the streets. But instead of backing off and realizing how much of his foot is in his mouth, he actually doubled down and put the other foot in his mouth, which I think is almost physically impossible, but he managed to do it with this tweet that came out yesterday. He said, "Today in the House, members of Parliament unanimously condemned the anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-black racism, homophobia, and transphobia that we've seen on display in Ottawa over the past number of days. Together, let's keep working to make Canada more inclusive." Like, what is he doing? Is he watching some show somewhere? Where is he seeing these things? Where is homophobia, transphobia, there are a lot of black people that are involved in participating. In fact, I saw one holding up a sign saying, "Am I a white supremacist?" Where does he get this from?
Do you think this will promote inclusiveness?
Inclusiveness,
by doing that. But what came to my mind when I saw this was something that goes on. It is projection. When an individual is guilty and knows about it and they're a public figure, it's never been as bad as it is now. What they do is they purposely flip it around and take the exact things they're guilty of and throw it on, and they did it pretty well for Trump. And we don't Trump. We don't defend Trump on a lot of his stuff. But really, when you look at Russiagate and this stuff that's going on, on January 6th. The Department of Justice, the FBI, and the rest, they are the individuals that have committed, as far as I'm concerned, many infractions, but they get away with it, and they have been able to get away with it. And I think addressing it, just being knowledgeable and realizing this, people have to wake up, because some people say it's the government. We can't condemn the government. Why can't we if they're committing serious crimes? I think at least that it's a purposeful way of trying to call attention to some of the things that are going on in this country. But that happens so much, and he's trying to project everything. He must be, if my theory is right, deep down in his heart, he must support
all of
this.
these things. Yeah. You know what I think about when I see him coming out of his hiding hovel and making these increasingly outrageous statements disconnected with reality. It really reminds me of Nicolae Ceausescu in December of 1989. You know, he was in Timișoara and he came out and he started giving a speech to the masses of people gathered there. And it was a cold, snowy day, and he started speaking and saying his usual blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden someone booed. And then a few people booed. And then more people booed. And then the whole thing came falling down for Ceausescu. And I wouldn't want his end on Trudeau, of course, but the whole thing came falling down because he was so out of touch, he couldn't stand even a little bit of criticism. And there are some parallels here, I think.
And the modern approach to that is a convoy.
Yeah, convoy. Peaceful convoy, which scares them.
Okay.
Well, let's move on to something less peaceful. And we saw this on Zero Hedge. They get the credit for finding this. But let's put up this next clip. Illinois Democrat representative calls for quarantine to observe those refusing vaccines. So she wants to build some camps, I think.
Yeah, you know, here it is. The people who took their vaccines, they're heroes. The people who didn't take it, you know, are the really bad people. And but if you had it and you're working within the system, you get punished, you get locked up, you go into quarantine, and now it's being discovered that probably didn't do any good, you know, of all that kind of stuff. So what do? They've run out of people to lock up, you know, for this stuff. So they're going to people who merely are saying, I don't want the shot. And they're going to quarantine them. They ought to change, at least have the courtesy of changing the word, because these people aren't going to spread a disease. And if your darn stuff works, if your mask works and your shots work, why are you so hysterical about somebody that probably has natural immunity and there's no evidence that they're spreading the disease compared to the people who have already had the shots? Some of the studies showed if you had the shot, you're more likely to spread them because there's a buildup of virus.
It also shows maybe she didn't get the memo, you know, but this whole idea that we're going to go fool Australia now is pretty unlikely, and especially because Alex Berenson, who's been so good about this the whole time, he just put out a new update on his site, on his Substack, citing a new poll released yesterday or Monday from Monmouth University, showing that 7 in 10 Americans, 70% of Americans agree with the statement that it's time we accept that COVID is here to stay and we just need to get on with their lives. So poor old Deb, let's put her up. Let's put that next clip up of Deb. Here's Deb, and I didn't put her phone numbers on because I don't want to give this woman a hard time. She's got the Karen cut, and her name is Deb, and she's very behind the times when she wants to force people to go into camps because they can't or won't, or for whatever reason, take the medications that Deb thinks they should take.
You know, there's a mixed deal here because, yes, some of this stuff is here to stay. The virus is here to stay. The colds are here to stay. But there's also people who are chanting now, all the regulations that they used that didn't accomplish anything, it didn't save lives, they're here to stay too.
Yeah.
It's sort of like what happened after 9/11 that they had prepared before 9/11 even occurred, you know, the Patriot Act. That wasn't created by the attack on 9/11, but it was something, there'll be a day and we're going to take advantage of a crisis, and that's what they're doing. So, but the COVID will be here to stay, or something similar to it, and the rejection of natural immunity and a condemnation of people who believe in it. And I just wish that there would be more professors. You know, we have well, their numbers are growing and there's more speaking out, but that's really where we have to answer this. People who have run these departments have taught medical students, so many doctors in practice believe in natural immunity. You know, and the weaker the community is, the poorer the community is, the more natural it is to fall in place. because it's a good medical approach, and people who get immunity that way is fine. It's sort of the other thing that is close to this is the overuse of antibiotics.
Yeah.
And that's a mixed bag because patients demand it and pharmaceutical companies demand it.
Yeah.
They're always looking for it. But the drugs that are available, ivermectin and hydroxy, the pharmacists know how to make it. It's been made. It's been around a long time. But you know what? It's cheap.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Boy, you don't want to mess with that, messing around with profits.
Yeah, that's it. Well, our last piece for the day is really fascinating, and it's around everywhere. This is the one we took from the Daily Wire. If we can put that next piece up, the next clip up. Johns Hopkins study. Lockdowns had, quote, little to no effect on COVID-19 mortality, but had devastating effects on society. And it's a study that they conducted, Johns Hopkins, studies in applied economics. And what they did, and without getting too far into the weeds, they basically did a study of the non-pharmaceutical interventions that were taken, and they categorized them according to how stringent and strict they were. And then they boiled it all down, and they looked and they found out that basically it had little to zero effect on saving people's lives from the particular virus, from COVID. But they had enormous effects on destroying many, many, many lives because of the, say, unintended consequences. So it's a big deal. It's the first of this kind that I've seen that really took a look. Were these things useful at all? No, they were not only not useful, they were massively counterproductive.
There are conditions where restrictions and even a mask is justifiable. And it's not like somebody has one answer for this. Oh, yes, everybody wear a mask or nobody wears a mask. Well, there's an easy solution with this. How about voluntarism? What about people making a decision for themselves? What if there's a coalition between patients and doctors, and if they get bad information, change their doctor. But you can't change your government overnight, and you can't change the power of the pharmaceutical industry. So that's where the problem is. But the system that we're talking about allows variation. There certainly we've never once preached here that don't ever take a vaccine. That vaccines kill you. That's not even a position. It's just trying to come up with some common sense. And even if you don't know the answer, you have a problem, and you're making a decision. Who's best able to solve problems? As far as I'm concerned, individuals are people whose lives are at stake, and they do it voluntarily. In a free society, information spreads quickly. And, there's a lot of medical information. I'm fascinated with the medical information that I found very sound, but I learned it from my grandmother, and there's fortunately a lot of that. But if that happens to be natural immunity, your grandmother's advice might not be safe to give anymore.
She'll go to the gulag. Well, here's a couple of quotes from the study itself, and this is from the Daily Wire, quoting the Johns Hopkins study. If we can put up that next clip if we get a chance. And it's a lot to read, but I just want to do a couple of them. Let me see, okay. Allow us to broaden our perspective after presenting our meta-analysis that focuses on the following question. What does the evidence tell us about the effects of lockdowns on mortality? We provide a firm answer to this question. The evidence fails to confirm that lockdowns have a significant effect in reducing COVID-19 mortality. The effect is little to none. The use of lockdowns is a unique feature of COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdowns have not been used to such a large extent during any of the pandemics of the past century. And let's just do the next one. I know this is a long segment, but I think it's worth repeating. However, lockdowns during the initial phase of COVID-19 pandemic have had devastating effects. They have contributed to reducing economic activity, raising unemployment, reducing schooling, causing political unrest, contributing to domestic violence, and undermining liberal democracy. These costs to society must be compared to the benefits of lockdowns, which our meta-analysis has shown are marginal at best. Such a standard benefit cost calculation leads to a strong conclusion. Lockdowns should be rejected out of hand as a pandemic policy instrument.
Everything you said, logical, and I can't imagine many people saying, no, we don't endorse it, or we shouldn't be allowed to hear it. But that to me is the problem is if you say or in practice what you say, you can lose a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole speech movement is all about. It's so destructive, and we need more Glenn Greenwalds. I'll tell you, in our universities. Of course, I don't think we're going to get the professors in the universities I'd like to see. I think the universities have sort of lost their way in many ways. But at least they have to be out there in this day and age. You know, the internet, and the internet's been giving us a service there, but now the internet has been turned into a police, a tool of the police for freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So that's where the problem is. So it's going to have to be up to the individual to look at this and make a decision. But this is the way it's always been. You have to decide whom you're going to believe, and that's not an easy job.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna close out, and I'm gonna skip those next two JPEGs and just go to that little video and play 20 seconds of that if we can get that queued up, because I want to end on a positive note. We talked a bit about how the convoy idea is so wonderful because it's so applicable, it's so easy to replicate in other circumstances. Well, here's down in Australia, right? This is the gulag down south, and the people have caught on down there. If we can queue up and watch it. Let's watch about 20 seconds of this. This is down in Australia. They're doing their own, they're down here in front of the Parliament building doing their own convoy. Let's have a look at this clip if we can. And you can see here the coppers are trying to hassle people, but they've set up their tents, they've set up their barbecues, and they're not having any of it. Someone commented on this, and they said a little while later the cops did leave. So strength in numbers, Australians, you're doing well. Get some trucks down there.
Get some courage.
Get some courage and some trucks.
Don't be a lion. A real lion is what we need. So. And you're
I'm not done yet. I am done.
Okay. I'm going to finish with a little story here. And this is disappointing because, you know, there's a town in Pennsylvania called Hershey's, and it's not too far from Gettysburg. So people from Gettysburg would frequently go to Hershey and take a tour around. And it has always had a good reputation.
Yeah.
And their Hershey chocolate bars are pretty darn good.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm swearing them off.
Oh, no.
Oh, now that I hear that I might not be able to eat Hershey bars anymore.
Uh-oh.
Hershey tells unvaccinated employees to hit the road, pal.
Oh, wow.
Leave. We're tired of you. And then the report on this showed that they had treated their workers pretty good, but it's back again to this pressure that can be put on these. I can't believe these individuals who have acted decently over the years and made decent Hershey bars would all of a sudden just say, well, I'm tired being a good guy, so I have to do this and kick out my employees because you're not doing what the government tells you to do. So that's not overly startling, but it's part of a mess that we have, and it's disappointing. So if there is a convoy that goes through Pennsylvania, go through Hershey's and tell them I want to eat Hershey bars, but I'm not going to eat Hershey bars as long as they're going to be firing their employees just because they won't take a risky vaccine. So anyway, I do want to thank all our viewers today for tuning in. We did have a bit of optimism, but a lot of concern. And like I said, one of my concerns expressed as I left Congress was free expression. If you have free expression, you're a long way to sorting things out to people. They have to make the decision. But it's very difficult now because it's the contest between what you can hear and what you can say that makes all the difference in the world. And you can't even have decent debate. So you have people lined up on two sides, of this. You have physicians that are on two sides. One, we think natural immunity is very good. Oh no, we hate that. If you say that, you get out of here. We don't want you in our hospital. And it's crazy. have to protect the ability to express ourselves, and they can never use any type of government force to directly impinge on that right, nor use that force to get the corporations to impinge on the rights of those individuals. That would go a long way toward this, toward the system of government where everything should be voluntary by both sides. Believe me, there'd be less fighting if voluntarism was substituted for the coercion that we put up with. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.